Hello and welcome. Welcome to the Barcoding Huddle. For those of you who have been on hold, hopefully that music didn't get stuck in your head too much. I'll try some different tunes out for next time. But welcome. I'm going to, at this point, introduce and let everybody who is a panelist to invite you to come on back on camera because we're going to go ahead and get started. So please come on back on camera. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so we can see everyone's beautiful faces. Welcome. So officially welcome to the Barcoding Huddle. Happy St. Patrick's Day to you all. I'm Jody Costa. I'm the Vice President of Marketing and Strategic Partnerships for Barcoding Incorporated, and I'm thrilled to have you here. And for those who are listening in, as we are about to start this live conversation, Barcoding is a supply chain automation and innovation company. We are thrilled today to dive into a topic that is near and dear to our VP of Business Development's heart. He's also our industry principal, but more on that to come. So we are really excited to dive into fleet management today, really focusing on drivers, driver trust, driver safety, and some of the new technology that's available to empower some really great change in the industry and to really help people. So I'm very excited. We've got a star-studded cast today. So you don't need to hear any more from me. I'm going to turn the reins over to Ken Curry, our VP of Business Development and our industry principal for transportation. So Ken, at this point, I'll let you take it away.
Thanks, Jody, and welcome everyone. I'm so excited to be part of in leading a distinguished panel today. I recently read the book, The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, and one of the most compelling sections of that book is in chapter 6, which details the transformation of Alcoa from one of the most dangerous companies in its industry to one of the safest companies in the world. It turns out that organizations that prioritize safety with a collective mission and keystone habits operate with higher efficiency, productivity, and performance. We've witnessed massive investment in fleet technology over the last few years. Combining telematics systems with fleet camera systems that are powered by machine vision and artificial intelligence enable fleet managers to change driver habits and drive end user acceptance in near real time. With a well-implemented approach and a good plan, these benefits will pay greater dividends for us over time. Well, not only for us, but for fleet operators and the rest of us that are on the road. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our panel. Del, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your company?
Sure. So thank you, Ken, and thanks for everyone for attending this huddle. So I'm Del Lisk, Vice President of Safety Services with Lytx. The company Lytx, which is formerly known as Drivecam, some of you may know of that name from years past, but as Ken kind of described, really our role has been for over 20 years to, ultimately the mission is to improve driver safety and protect the people behind the wheel, the businesses that are putting those people out on the road, and also protecting the general public that shares the roads with them. And we really have largely done that through the use of what we refer to as video telematics. And that is a telematics solution that also has a very deeply evolved video component with machine vision and artificial intelligence. So if I may, Ken, mind if I deviate just for a brief moment to kind of my story to set a little context? So I've been in fleet safety, let's just say 30 plus years. I won't go into depth on that, but if you look at the top of my head, you know where the plus is coming from. So I've been in fleet safety for a long time. That's really been my focus, is helping to improve drivers to get the results I mentioned earlier. For many, many years, I was with and ran a company that was called Smith System. So it's a driver training company. Some of you may be familiar with it. It's probably the best known corporate driver training program out there. So I was with them for 21 years. And very successful company, got a lot of great feedback, did a lot of the instruction out on the road on teaching kind of advanced driving skills. But invariably, one comment we got all the time was, hey, this is great stuff, but how do I really know if my drivers are using this? And I always scratched my head, and apparently scratched it too much over time. But it was always a question I couldn't really answer that well. And then in 2001, I ran into this little company at the time, a startup called Drivecam, that had this little video recorder that they were putting in a vehicle. It only had a forward view. You could download the video by connecting it to a USB. It was very primitive, but the idea was that it would capture video of on-road driving. And that's where, to me, the connection came into play. I now saw that, well, that's how you can answer that question the customer has. How do I know if the folks behind the wheel are doing the right things or not? Well, video is really the way to do it. So we sold Smith a year later, joined Drivecam, which later became renamed as Lytx, and joined up with Surfsight more recently. But I've been with the company now for about 18 plus years, watched us grow from roughly a couple hundred vehicles using our solutions to about 700,000. So that's a short life story, Ken.
So Dell, what's your favorite color?
Blue.
Great. Let me introduce Chris Steineck. Chris, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and about Surfsight powered by Lytx?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Chris Steineck. I'm VP of US Sales for Surfsight. And I started in the driver behavior space back with e-driving before they were e-driving, and really took a keen liking to the technology and the advancements that's going on with in this industry. So I really stayed close to home with the driver behavior part of it. Went on to create work with a couple partners to create a product called Predictive Coach, which is driver behavior, videos based on, or it's videos based on driver training based on driver behaviors on telematics triggers. And then went on to a camera company, and then was at Geotab for a year and a half, taking care of camera partners in the marketplace, and then came over to Surfsight. And so really my evolution started with Surfsight, and then folded into Lytx May of last year. We were acquired by Lytx. We launched in the market October 2019 as Surfsight. Was acquired by Lytx in May of 2020. And so it's been amazing, and happy to be here as well. And look forward to broadening this topic and enlightening people on what I keep near and dear to my heart.
So Chris, this may be the hardest question that I'll ask today, but who's your favorite representative from Barcoding Incorporated?
Oh, that is absolutely simple. His name is Rocky Pugiles. No, it's Ken Curry, of course. There is no question.
Thanks, Chris. And and now to Matt Camden. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do for a living?
Thanks a lot, Ken. Happy to be here. My name is Matt Camden. I'm a senior research associate at the Virginia Tech Transportation Institute. My background is actually in organizational and behavior management, which safety is definitely a part of. I've been at VTTI for 13 years now, and just a little bit about VTTI for you guys who aren't familiar. The Virginia Tech Transportation Institute's actually one of the largest university-based transportation institutes in the world, depending on kind of what metrics you guys look at. We have close to 500 faculty, staff, and students whose primary job is really just to find ways we can make vehicles and our roadways and our drivers safer in this country, with the goal of ultimately, eliminating all fatalities and reducing the number of serious crashes and property damage crashes. I mean, we do research on anything having to do with driving. It could be cars, it could be trucks, it could be motorcycles, bicycles, scooters, bridges, you name it, and we're doing it. And really kind of the great thing about what we do is we aren't in our ivory towers just doing research for the sake of it. We're doing research to make impacts, whether that's for companies to help their products become better, more effective, or we're looking at regulations and making it so that our laws are more effective to help keep our roadways safer out there.
So Matt, this will be an easy one for you, fun follow-up question, and we'll just keep it to the people here on the huddle. Can you tell us when Tesla's going to launch their full self-driving taxi fleet?
I cannot say that. It's going to be a ways off to looking at kind of what's been going on with Tesla these days. I just saw stuff yesterday with another truck crash, and I think they got to work on their branding on this autopilot first.
Well, here's an easy one for you, an easier one for you, Matt. Can you tell us what is the state of fleet safety in 2021 and how technology is changing the game for commercial enterprises?
Yeah, I think this is a good starting off point for our discussion. And when we talk about fleet safety, it really comes down to kind of looking at what's causing crashes. And really, we've been doing research in this space for 30 plus years, and other people have been doing it since the 70s. And it's all so consistent. It comes down to what the drivers are doing behind the wheel. Now, when we look at fleet safety, 2020 was just a crazy year. COVID had a major impact in all of our lives. And this is no different in terms of driving. We've got some preliminary estimates from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the National Safety Council showing that even though people and fleets weren't driving as much, the seriousness of the crashes that are happening on the roadway are just horrible. Fatal crashes were up 8% last year. And that's just the raw numbers. So when we look at, fatalities per miles driven, it rose 24% over 2019 to 2020. And if we look at that increase, that's actually the worst increase in fatal crashes since 1924. So if you think back to the cars in 1924, they weren't safe. No seatbelts, no roofs, whatever. So last year was a pretty bad year in terms of driving safety. Now, we don't have very good information on the fleets, but just from a kind of a non-scientific perspective, it seems like there were more fleet crashes around us in Virginia. We live right on a major East Coast corridor, Interstate 81, and we are hearing crashes, every day, which definitely seem more frequent than previously. So, it's bad, but I think technology is really progressing, and I think it's critical in terms of fleet safety, whether that's advanced driver assisted systems, whether it's telematics, whether it's video driver monitoring systems. I think they all kind of play a part, and they're all really advancing to help us get at those behaviors and really what are causing the crashes for fleets.
Just a follow-up to that, what do you think the state of the technology is today? You said it's advancing. At what rate are these systems advancing, and what does that mean to to our customers and interested audience members?
Yeah, so just in terms of the computer systems, here we're going to be really focusing on the artificial intelligence. That is really penetrating the market at a very fast rate. So it's really, really advancing. If we look at more traditional types of safety systems like automatic braking, these companies, that are putting these systems out, they're putting out multiple generations of new technology every single year. So, in terms of tech, it's really coming fast, and it's really becoming better quite quickly.
Thanks, Matt. Dale, let's come over to you for a moment. Lytx has been monitoring driver behavior for about 23 years now, and I think that you have monitored more than 100 billion miles. How does, when you take that and you put it together and you package it as a company, how can Lytx technology influence and improve or change that behavior?
Yeah, and I think kind of following along with what Matt said, because it's funny, what was true 30, 40, 50 years ago still is true. When you look at a crash, what caused it? First you look outside of the vehicle, but you always end up looking inside of the vehicle, and it's the person behind the wheel and what they did or didn't do that ultimately was the factor. So that's still the case, and that's still obviously a big focus for both Matt and our companies also. One of the fundamental challenges here on changing human behavior is this, and perhaps the audience would want to ask this question within their own workforces, but when I get with groups, oftentimes I ask the question, I just simply ask them to rate themselves as drivers, rate themselves excellent, good, above average, excellent, above average, average, below average, and poor. And then I ask them to do the same envisioning everyone else that they have to share the road with. And what you end up with is essentially their assessment is that everyone else that surrounds them sucks, right? They're all a bunch of bad drivers. And yet they rate themselves as pretty darn good. About 80+% rate themselves at least above average. So to me, that's one of the fundamental challenges that that we've all been facing in trying to change human behavior. Everyone in driving, everyone thinks they're as good as they need to be. Well, where our solution comes into play can really have a big impact is in two ways. One is, as already mentioned, the machine vision and artificial intelligence. So the machine vision ability to identify objects, artificial intelligence ability to kind of decide, what was risky or what action should have been taken, those sorts of things. But that machine vision, artificial intelligence, and its its inclusion into this technology really allows the technology to make drivers aware in real time of the errors that they're making, and even send audible alerts so they can do self-correction. And even beyond that, so some are obvious. So the solution might call it that you're not wearing a seatbelt. It's like, oh geez, you're right, I forgot to put one on, I'll go ahead and put it on right now. A driver gets that. There's other things that happen, perhaps like a near collision or something, that they may not really understand the dynamic. And that's where the video becomes such an important player. Whether it's the driver reviewing the video themselves independently, or sitting down with a supervisor or someone to kind of go over it together to see what can I do differently. That's really the ability. Drivers don't think they need to improve because they don't see what they're doing. They see what everyone else is doing. But having a video has provided that next level of they can actually see the mistakes and learn from them. So that machine vision, artificial intelligence, ability to identify in real time, and the video to follow up as a self-coaching or management coaching tool has been critical.
So Chris, you've worked for both startups and market leaders in this space, really in the fleet management and in the vision system space. Now, Surfsight was an innovative product that came out in 2019, and now it's part of the market leader, Atlytics. What does that mean for your customers and your prospective customers?
Yeah, it's been fantastic. And so what you have is two very different organizations coming together. In Surfsight, what you had is this very determined and very capable team that put together a great product, right? But again, when you have people, now Surfsight didn't really know what they didn't know, right? So they hadn't been in the fleet space. They had 20 years in video conferencing, could marry up hardware and software, and did a fantastic job. But then, 4 months in, inject Lytix. Lytix provided the 20 plus years of experience that we needed to just, you say the hockey stick, to just that trajectory of product development has been fantastic. And so you've got this marrying of these two very different organizations with two very different processes and people coming together. And so where Surfsight was very raw, but very, very beneficial, had a great products. Now you bring in Lytix and you bring in, as Dell was just talking about, MVAI, to be able to add that to the Surfsight product line or feature line has been a giant leap for us. And so, had we maintained and stayed at Surfsight and not been acquired, we'd probably be on a much slower trajectory than we are right now. And so we feel very fortunate that it happened the way that it did. And you can see, if you look back even 6 months, you can see where the product was compared to where it's at right now. It's light years. And so just that experience across the board, we're not just talking about, the hardware development, we're talking about applications, we're talking about new features, the insight that everyone at Lytix has provided the Surfsight R&D team has been amazing. And so it's only going to get better as these two companies continue to integrate into each other and continue to work. I mean, it's the next six months to a year it's going to be fascinating. It's going to be fascinating.
It's been great to watch you mature over the last 6 months, Chris. So we're looking forward to the next 6 months. Dell, something seriously that Chris did say, or I think that I heard you say, Chris, is that experience matters. And So when we're talking about things like machine vision and artificial intelligence, why does experience matter, Del?
Yeah, and it's essential. So, as Matt alluded, the pace and really the volume of new fleet technologies that are coming into the marketplace are incredible. Some are really good. Some are, quite frankly, just forced to follow along because that's where the market's going, and they don't necessarily um, have the solution correct. And a lot of that is because they don't really have the experience to be able to do that. So when it comes to machine vision and artificial intelligence, again, machine vision is identifying object. Artificial intelligence is making decisions about what is risky. That takes training, and that training needs to be good training based on a lot of data for the MVAI and alerts to be accurate. One of the worst things that can happen to a technology implementation is putting it in a vehicle and it's wrongly identifying objects incorrectly. It's creating reports that are painting drivers as not good drivers when it's not accurate. It's sounding alerts all the time that aren't correct. On the front end, that aggravates drivers. On the back end, management eventually gets frustrated. And we all know fleets where they just at one point just tore it out because it just wasn't accurate enough. So accuracy is essential. As Chris had mentioned earlier, we've collected actually over 120 billion miles of driving that we've evaluated. We have over 150 million driving video clips that we put human eyeballs to validate our findings. Every day, the MVAI is identifying 50 billion objects every single day. So, and we're in over 700,000 vehicles. So just that sheer volume of data and the validation of what it's collecting and all of that process has ensured that our findings are accurate. So to that point, we require a 95% confidence level with our MVAI before it actually calls out a seatbelt not worn or a driver holding a cell phone, those sorts of things. Anything less than that, we reject it because we don't want to pollute our client's environment with inaccurate information.
Thanks, Del. So Matt, we've heard about machine vision, we've heard about AI, probably some other buzzwords. Can you tell us what's really going on behind the scenes, like maybe with the algorithms?
Yeah, so Dale kind of pointed this out. So, AI and machine, I mean, they're really complex systems, right? The machine vision is helping interpret what the camera is capturing, right, and turning it into computer code. The AI is helping this computer system learn from all of that information. So kind of just in simple terms, I mean, this AI is really helping the driver monitoring systems learn from all the sensors and all the data that's being collected, whether that's capturing things from the camera, capturing information from the J-bus, capturing information from the radar if the vehicle is equipped with it. And it's helping the driver monitoring system learn, what is happening inside and outside that vehicle. So as Dale mentioned, the AI, it's processed just enormous amounts of data to help the driver monitoring system learn which of those ones and zeros in that computer language mean what, which pattern of ones and zeros is and means a driver is distracted, which pattern means a driver is fatigued, which pattern means there's a near collision coming up. So it's kind of similar to, and how they're working is similar to how our brains actually function. If you think about when a teen is just learning how to drive, they aren't sure exactly which scenarios are risky or the appropriate response to different scenarios. Well, over time, that teen learns, which scenarios are actually risky and what the appropriate response is. So the AI is helping the driver monitoring systems figure out which scenarios actually are, risky. Do the drivers need to be alerted about, or does the company need to follow up with afterwards? As Del mentioned, I think, there's a lot of human elements looking at this data to help teach these systems and teach the AI, what is appropriate. And I think that's really where the maturity of technology comes into play, because analytics, they have hundreds and billions of miles collected, all this information. They know what systems are, or what scenarios are risky, what's leading to these crashes. So they have this wealth of information to help train these AI and these algorithms to help that kind of near real time alert and warning for the drivers.
You know, it got me thinking a little bit about the human component that you were talking about, feeding essentially a deep learning system, right? And how hard would it be to do things without that experiential part of, of an algorithm, but just to do it purely on math and by collecting data and analyzing it and feeding a deep learning system, that way, which, I assume a lot of the newer providers are doing, because really that's their only route to market.
Yeah, I can touch on a little bit this, and then I'd like to hear maybe Chris and Dell's opinion on it as well. Certainly, I think that's where some of these things have to start, right? But by having all this experience, it's accelerating the reliability and the validity of these alerts, because without that, you're gonna have a lot of these false positives. And when we say false positive, that's an alert for something that actually wasn't happening, right? So for instance, VTTI, we do what's called naturalistic driving research, where we have video in vehicles and accelerometers and all these other sensors collecting data, very similar to kind of these video-based telematic systems. Well, we get flags and alerts based on the driving. So we get alerts when a driver, for instance, maybe goes over a speed bump, it'll flag it, say, hey, this might be a safety-related event. Well, the driver was doing everything fine. They were going slow. They just went over a speed bump. So that's a false positive. Now, on the other side, like a false negative is when the driver was doing something risky, but the system missed it, right? It didn't alert. So maybe that driver picked up their cell phone and was looking at it, but they didn't get that near real-time alert. Well, having that wealth of information and that human component, they really help reduce all of those misses and all those false alerts. And really, as Del mentioned, help the fleets and get rid of all that noise that's out there.
Yeah, Ken, Matt hit it spot on. And I wish I could explain things as well as he did. I love the teen example for the AI, by the way. But that's exactly right. I think for those much newer to the business and really just be new adopters of MVAI in a video telematic solution, there's no choice. We're not going to sell them our data, I'll tell you, and nor would other competitors that have large data. So they have no choice but to really just put it out their best efforts and hope that it's learning as quickly as possible over time. And that's fine. That's how you start. I mean, any of you with an Alexa device, I remember the first year or so, my Alexa device was doing all sorts of wacky stuff, and it's gotten a lot better. But so that's how they get better, but that's pretty painful for a customer. And it's going to be painful for that customer for probably 2 or 3 more years, because the device just isn't sophisticated enough yet.
So Chris, on that, to that end, Surfsight employs AI and machine vision for the purpose of interrupting and transforming the habit feedback loop with each driver in the cab. How does that work?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite topics, because I really think this is where we're going to, really drive change. And so understanding human behavior and understanding that habits are created, and that's how humans basically function, is the brain, in order to function and multitask, creates habits for itself. And so cell phone use, eating, smoking, for most, these have become habitual, right? And so it's really hard to fault the drivers in the cab when they start doing these functions, because it's an automatic thing. It's innate behavior. And so what we're doing is really going to the root cause and trying to change the behaviors where it matters most. And that's in the cab with the drivers at the moment that these happen. And so, the way I look at it is like a Pavlov's bell theory, right? It's over time. The bell rings, the dog salivates, he knows the food's coming. It's the same thing. The driver's going to get these beeps when they're doing something they shouldn't be doing. They put that phone down. Eventually, over time, the brain's going to retrain in the cab, in that particular environment, that when they go to reach for the cell phone, they're going to know inherently to, don't pick it up. The camera's going to beep at us. It's going to let us know we're doing these unwanted behaviors. And so really, really excited about the way that this is developing and the technology advancement right now and where we're at, because we really are at the tip of the iceberg to really driving change across the fleet space first. And hopefully this bleeds into, the consumer space, because I think it's so important. It is 100% retraining the brain. And the way that I look at my daughter, she's 14 years old. She walks around with a phone glued to her hand, essentially. I see it, it doesn't leave her hand. And so back to the driver part of that, we don't want to continuously browbeat. In the past, it's like, you've had multiple events, you're doing bad, Look, let's put the onus on the driver. Let's really let the driver be a part of the change. Let's let them lean into this system, because traditionally the systems have been built to just kind of beat them down almost. The word that everybody uses is big brother. Look, let's eliminate that. And I think that's what we've done, is really eliminated that big brother. Let's drive change at the psychological level, at the habitual level, where true change happens. And let's let that driver lean into it. Let's let him be a part of that experience. Let's let him control how that reacts, right? And so if they want to drive it, they want to change it, they're going to put that phone down, they're going to lean into this system. And it eliminates the need for the fleet manager to continuously come in with the big stick and do that. So it's fantastic. I mean, this is a big turning point in fleet right now in the industry for driving change.
And Chris, I'd like to add a little follow-up to that. So the real-time alerts, I mean, it's been shown to be effective for other driving behaviors that have historically been very hard to change. So if we just think about kind of our most basic and most effective safety device in our car, our seatbelt. It wasn't too long ago where people weren't buckling up. Rates of seatbelt use were really kind of low. But then what happened? Car manufacturers started putting that buzzer in there, right? When the seatbelts weren't being buckled in. Well, what do you know? People started using their seatbelts more, and now we're up to, I think, the latest prevalence rates for seatbelt use were above 90%. So just having that warning is really, really effective at driving change in real time.
Yeah, and both of your comments got me thinking, Matt. I think when you introduced yourself, you were talking about the rate of change for technology, right? And how, which really is not only just a function of computing power, right, in Moore's law, right, but it's also a function of, on the software side and in the cloud, right, and then the speed of the networks to connect to that cloud. But something interesting, Chris, about Surfsight powered by Lytx and the MVAI is that it's made possible, and that real-time or near real-time experience is made possible by edge computing. Can you talk a little bit about that and why that matters?
Yeah. So edge computing's it's a new term in this industry, and all edge. So here's the learning moment for everybody. You're going to learn something new today. For those of you that don't know what edge processing is, all it means is the data is being processed on the device, right? So it's not being sent to the cloud or to the servers to be processed in there. It's done directly on the device itself. Why that's important? Think about multiple different factors: cell signal, data, how the servers are reacting to the data, how fast they're processing that data, and then how quick, where they're at with the cell signal to send that back down. There's typically lag. If you're in a poor service area, you're not going to get that in a fraction of a second. And so in order to drive change, you have to, again, be on point. You have to be monitoring that driver, and that device and that application has to be watching him and reacting in hundreds of seconds in order to be effective and to hit it directly at the time that it's happening. And so, yeah, our Surfsight device does, and that's one of the greatest innovations that Israeli team, the Surfsight team, originally did was building enough power within that system to be able to do that edge processing, to adopt the MVAI and drive that true change where it happens in that cab with a fraction of a second.
Thanks, Chris. So our audience has asked a number of questions, and let me pose a couple for you all. Matt, maybe we'll start with you. Can driver camera systems be used as effectively for small fleets as for large ones? And here's another one that came in as well. How are privacy concerns affecting adoption? So you can answer one or both.
Yeah, so I'll touch on both, but certainly I think Chris and Del, from their perspective and reaching out and talking to fleets as well, can certainly have input too. So for the first one, in terms of small versus large fleets, we get this question all the time when we do webinars, when we're talking with fleets in our consulting activities, or when we're doing presentations. And my response is absolutely. Just because a big fleet is out there and can use this doesn't mean a small fleet wouldn't see benefits on terms of safety and all of the other things as well. Again, driver behavior is causing the crashes, and that doesn't matter if you're a small fleet or a big fleet. Your crashes are being caused by driver behavior. Now, the frequency of your crashes as a fleet as a whole is going to obviously be different just because of your exposure to those crashes, but it's still behavior. So when I talk to fleets and give suggestions on how they can improve their safety, targeting programs, policies, technologies that can make interventions at the behavior, that's the way to go. Now, we've done case studies in consulting with, fleets with, 10 trucks, all the way up to thousands of trucks. And even the ones with 10 trucks say, they've reduced their crashes by using video-based monitoring systems by 50% sometimes more, sometimes less, but that's a big difference, especially when you think about that preventing that one crash that is a serious crash resulting in lifelong injuries or fatalities. That one crash could potentially put that small company out of business. So yes, absolutely, doesn't really matter the size. Of course they require the upfront cost, but you're going to see the same benefits. Now, in terms of the second question, the privacy concerns, I think it was Chris mentioned the Big Brother thing. Obviously, no one's going to like somebody watching over their shoulder. And, at Virginia Tech, we drive vehicles with camera monitoring systems in there too. So I feel the pain, but when we think about the purpose of the systems, it's to make you better so that you can come back to be with your loved ones at the end of the day, so you can continue doing your job, so you can see them again. That's the benefit. And I think a lot of the privacy concerns are based on myths out there surrounding these technologies. And fleets, when they go to start the implementation process, really need to get in front of that. It's really how it's introduced to the company or to the drivers. And then kind of further, a lot of the privacy concerns kind of go away once the drivers realize that these video systems have a major benefit for them besides just the safety part. So I'm sure Del and Chris, you guys have stories like this too, but we talk to fleets all the time saying they're implementing the technology. The drivers they get a lot of pushback, mainly about the privacy stuff. They talk to them, they implement them, and then soon after, driver gets into a crash, right? That driver's not at fault for that crash. We were talking with the fleet down in Texas recently. 2 weeks after implementing the technology, one of their trucks got into a crash. It was a not at fault crash. The driver was doing everything they could. They were at speed limit. They weren't distracted. They were within their hours of service. They were in their lane, right? And we know this because of the video, right? So we have evidence. They got sued for that crash. Of course, the carrier had the video. They knew what happened. They shared that video with law enforcement. They shared it with the other person's lawyer, and that lawsuit went away. So once drivers realized that, hey, these things may save my butt, right? They can save my job. They can save me from going to jail. They can save me millions of dollars potentially. Every single driver at that fleet asked for one of those monitoring systems in the truck. So it kind of did a whole lot to kind of overcome the privacy stuff.
Yeah, we have stories like that too, but Del, I bet you have a whole lot more than we do. You're on mute, Del.
I bumped the controls on my lap. I'm sorry, but and you're exactly right. But in the interest of actually ending this on the hour, I won't do all the stories by any means. But a couple things. So one, as Matt mentioned, when you go back, if a driver expresses concerns about the privacy, or ask them, well, tell me about it. It usually comes down to one of three things: misconceptions. Matt called them myths. They have a wrong idea of what this stuff is and how it works and how invasive it really isn't. They've received misinformation. Someone else out there is just kind of poisoning the well and feeding them the wrong stuff, or more likely and most likely just lack of experience. They haven't experienced this before. As Matt alluded to, over time, the first few days, many drivers are kind of uncomfortable about it, a little nervous about it. You ask them 2 months later, it's like they almost forget the stuff is even there in a well-run program. The other thing I do want to touch on, and audience, bear with me because it's so important. A lot of this goes away, as Matt described, when the drivers see what the benefit is to them. And there's several benefits. I mean, a truck driver becoming a safe is a huge benefit. But again, they already think they're may not always recognize that. But that one where they all get it, that at any given day, they could be falsely accused of causing a crash, and they employed and out on the streets because of that. So here's one with one of our. So that's one of the biggest things that flips the driving audiences when they hear about a coworker protected. So here's something that happened a few years back. One of our clients in food distribution, their driver was in the San Francisco Bay Area, kind of early morning, kind of that timing where sun's just beginning to come up. It's still kind of, kind of dusk. It's not, or is it dawn? I'm sorry, it's dawn. Not the sun hasn't fully come up yet. So the driver's going along, and had an oncoming vehicle. And if during that time of morning, when you look out and the headlights are in your face, it kind of creates a kind of a spray across the windshield that makes it a little harder to see. Well, unfortunately, at that same time, up ahead, a senior citizen, a lady in her 80s, started to cross the road. Our driver didn't see him, ran over, and unfortunately killed her. Well, police showed up 15, 20 minutes later. Because it's a fatality, they called a detective. Detective shows up a few minutes later after that. Sun's now up. So the detective looks at the scene, clear roadway, visibility is great. There's no reason why the truck driver shouldn't have been able to see this. And so they actually started writing him up, filing criminal charges for manslaughter. That detective then comes to find out that one of our devices was in the cab of the vehicle. They get access to the video, but they don't really understand how it works. So the detective called me up and I kind of talked them through it all. And when you look at the video, what you see is it's in the moment, exactly that at that time of day. You could see visibility was very tough. You could only see that pedestrian in literally unfortunately, the last moment of her life, the last second. She only in that moment did she show up. So the truck driver had no ability to see and react before that. The inside view also revealed that the truck driver wasn't drowsy, wasn't on the phone, was attentive, and so the detective ended up flipping it from being a manslaughter charge to just simply a very unfortunate, horrible tragedy. So these kind of stories that are real, when others hear about it, that's one of, to my experience, has been the biggest thing that really gains the acceptance of the technology.
Thanks, Del. Chris, in the interest of time, we'll keep going here. We have another customer question, and this one's kind of close to my heart because we're a company that is focused on continuous improvement internally, not only internally, but it starts with us, right? But very much so with our customers. So one of our audience members would like us to describe the system architecture and how that facilitates change management.
All right, so let's see, system architecture and how it change. So maybe you can is there an elaborate a little bit on that, or you're muted, Ken. Sorry, Ken, you're muted.
Yeah, it's amateur hour still. Why don't you describe the architecture from a hardware network and maybe cloud perspective? And we did touch on this a little bit earlier about kind of edge computing and whatnot. But what does the architecture mean? Again, this is a question, so I'm expecting the change management. How does your product improve, evolve, change over time, right? Some of that change is probably, coming from, MBAI analytics, but also that change is probably incorporating lessons learned, right? Back into the system. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So really, the system itself was designed to be entirely flexible, right? And I think that's a key part of this is being able to configure, being able to fit into multiple different fleets and be able to satiate different safety programs, right? And so we really are going to embrace that. And so moving forward, actually starting backwards, this whole product was designed by the industry, right? And so feedback is paramount to how this was created, and feedback is how it's going to continue to evolve. And so we have a team that's dedicated to working with industry experts, fleets out on the road, as well as fleet management, resellers. And so this product is going to continue to evolve based on what the industry is telling us. And so it's not we think that this is what the industry needs to do. It's the industry's telling us that this is the direction that it's heading, and this is how we can apply technology to continue to evolve this along that line. And so, but keeping that flexibility is key as well. And so, while some people may be uncomfortable adopting this, new technology, we're able to work within those parameters and help them adjust until they get comfortable and then turn it on. And so what I mean by that is, being able to have that outside lens on, but not utilizing all the driver behaviors right up front, right? And so, when I think back to like what Matt was talking about small to mid-sized fleets and adoption, and this is really what's key to getting those small to mid-sized fleets to lean in. The industry started at very expensive linear type systems, and so these small to mid-sized fleets couldn't pay for them, didn't want to pay for them, they were expensive. And so Surfsight's really the first entrant that allows that flexibility for a small fleet to come in, get comfortable with the technology, turn on what they need. We have what's called lens as a sensor, where you don't have that inward video turned on. It's just managing the driver behavior, working with that driver without actually having video. And so that's a major advancement. That's a major technological advancement. And so, we're going to continue to embrace that, but still continue to embrace the configurability to allow fleets to adopt what they need as they need it to get comfortable with technology as the trajectory continues to soar.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, Chris, and appreciate that. And I think you really hit the technology part. You were also touching on how, customers or new, people that are adopting the technology for the first time can do so on an iterative basis, right? They don't have to just jump into the deep end of the pool or big bang it. From that perspective, Del and Matt, anything that you wanted to add from the change management side, which is really about, the people and the process that, that go into the technology.
Yeah, so I think, Chris, we hadn't covered before, but I think it's an essential point, is really the flexibility of the solution. No two companies are the same. Their operational capabilities are different. The cultures are different. So some companies may want to enable a lot more features upfront than another. And it's, in my opinion, especially because, management needs to understand kind of how to manage the solution. Vehicle operators need to understand how to operate within that environment. I've always been a fan of let's kind of the crawl, walk, run. Let's enable a few features, let people get comfortable with that, learn how to manage that properly, and then move on from there. So I wholeheartedly agree with that. And maybe the only other piece that I want to add that's not a technology piece, but I think it's so important, is just also the simple step of meeting with all stakeholders to explain the solution. What is it? Why are we doing it? What's the benefit to you? Meeting with all these groups, and on the driver side, meeting with them to answer these questions before the first device is put in a vehicle is another critical part of that change management process.
Yeah, I agree, Del. So I think that that meeting is really, really important. And, you know, the fleets that we talk to, the most successful ones in change management are sharing the data. So helping all the stakeholders, whether they're dispatchers, whether they're the drivers, whether they're management or maintenance, sharing the data on why this technology is going to address and make their drivers safer. I think it really goes a long way, because a lot of the fleets we talk to, management, you know, they will have data on, you know, maybe a driver manager will have data on their particular drivers, but they may not know what's going on with the other drivers in the fleet or the other divisions, right? So by sharing kind of and giving everyone this overall picture on why you are implementing specific technology or specific program kind of goes a long way to help people understand and eliminate some of that initial backlash.
Yeah, that's great, Matt. That's another thing that we do here at Barcoding. We start with why. I think we're going to do maybe 2 more questions from the audience, so I'll put this out for everyone. Drivers to this day do not trust DLD. How do we get them to trust machine vision and artificial intelligence?
Yeah, so I go back to kind of what I'm talking about leaning into the driver. I think we're recognizing that we have to be more of a product that works in tandem with the driver. You know, and that goes in twofold, right? We're alleviating some of the pressure of the fleet management to be constantly manage this, and we're allowing that driver to lean into it, to manage it themselves, and to drive the change, you know, in there in the cab with themselves. And so I think that's a start.
Yeah, and Chris, I think that with this one, I think it's really pretty easy if I'm interpreting the question right. It's simply, you know, the machine vision, the MVI and the alerts, you know, when it identifies a risky behavior, it alerts the driver immediately. If it's correct and accurate, the driver will accept it. If it's continually incorrect, they'll know immediately, and it starts to lose them. So I think within a week, you've got a driver that's either trusting or not trusting based on that accuracy factor.
Great, thanks. And one final question, and then we'll wrap up. Do these solutions easily integrate with geotab telematics?
Absolutely, yeah. This product was, well, as I alluded to when I did my intro. So I was at Geotab when we first started talking to Surfsight, and so it was designed to integrate with Geotab. And so Geotab's got teams dedicated to us. The first time I've ever seen this, Geotab lean into a product this deeply, as well as ourselves. We've got teams dedicated to continual innovation with Geotab. And so yeah, it's a deep integration. It's going to continue to only evolve and become a much better experience, so that, you know, those who adopt these systems have a nice linear enterprise look and feel, to where it's one place to go for everything you need for your fleet. So yeah, that's the intention, to continue to drive that integration, continue to improve that look and feel. And it's fantastic as it is, and only getting better.
All right, we have a couple minutes. So who's the best driver between the 3 of you?
I know for a fact it's myself. We've been watching the other 2 for many years, and I'm definitely better.
So I'll throw this out, a final question to all of you. What advice could you give our audience from a best practice perspective on the evaluation, the deployment, and the use of fleet camera systems? Matt, just to make it easy, why don't we start with you? Could you answer the evaluation part?
Yeah, absolutely. So just quickly to make sure we're on time here, a lot of companies will kind of implement safety technologies and forget about them. And that's not what we want to do. We want to have this continued evaluation to make sure we're getting the best value we can of it. So you want to look to see, you know, are the behaviors that you're concerned about, are they improving? Are they staying the same, or are they getting worse? We need to look to see if there are any new kind of unsettling behavioral or safety trends that your fleet's happening. You know, you can just obviously look at, you know, are your crashes being reduced, or the rate of near crashes, are they being reduced? And I think the other important piece is to do a cost benefit analysis, identify that return on investment. You know, we're in safety. We love these things. Anything that makes our drivers safer, we want. But not everyone in the fleet, if you want to sell it to the owners, to all these other people, you got to bring in that financial part. So I think that's a critical piece for your evaluation that we recommend fleets look at.
Totally agree. And just a quick little anecdote. One of our sales reps had been working with a Canadian customer in fourth quarter, and the feedback we had gotten back from them is that it costs too much. I'm not sure, don't know. So we instituted a pilot in the end of January. Within 2 or 3 days, the one of their drivers, they had 2 pilot cameras. Within 2 or 3 days, one of their drivers got in an accident. They had the video evidence. The evidence basically showed the driver looking at their cell phone, playing, I'm kind of dating myself. I say Angry Birds, but whatever the new thing is there, right? And you know what happened about the cost benefit analysis? The very next day, we got an order for the rest of the cameras for their fleet. So yes, absolutely. The more due diligence you do up front, but when you also think about this in terms of, the application of the technology, right? Boy, oh boy, what's the cost of avoiding an accident at the end of the day? And those are the soft costs that are hard to compute, right? So Chris, really quickly, second part of this question, 1 or 2 tips on ensuring a smooth deployment for this technology?
Yeah, I would say just making sure that you're doing your due diligence on, what your fleet needs are for installation, for driver adoption, just being thorough, on doing your evaluation for your specific needs, your specific fleet is paramount. It's understanding what you're trying to accomplish, what your configurations are going to look like to accomplish what your safety program objectives are, and just making sure those are aligned as you're deploying this product, and understanding where the product can go, right? So as you evolve your safety program, can this product evolve with it? And is it set up to evolve with your safety program as you continue to change? Because hopefully your safety program will evolve, right? And it should change year in and year out as you reevaluate where you're at. And so I think that would definitely help.
And Del, why don't you bring us home? What do leading fleets do with lytics technology post-deployment? Can you maybe just give us a quick overview of what that looks like?
Yeah, and I'll just speak to it maybe from just really briefly, a short, medium, and long term. So in the short term, it's really a focus on acceptance and execution. And so that's, getting support from leadership, really, really good communication to all the stakeholders, and making sure that management and drivers kind of understand how to execute their roles. And then finally, and Chris just touched on this, but develop some simple measurements of defining what success will look like. So define how you're going to measure the success of the program. Maybe 6 months later, it's circling back to everyone and getting, looking at the results, what's working, what isn't, getting feedback about what's difficult to do, what's not. Can we do things a little bit differently, and incorporating that into the, kind of the go forward. And then finally, on a long-term basis, I think, and this is maybe 1 to 2 years out, you start taking a second look at your training programs, your company policies, maybe the roles that are executing the various tasks within the program. You might want to make some changes there. Integrate those results perhaps into management and driver compensation might be another element of this. So and then finally, probably even integrating some recognition and incentives for the high performers. So the bottom line is really kind of integrating it all into just the normal flow of your business.
Great, Dale. I couldn't agree more. We follow a process, people, technology approach here at Barcoding. So making the right technology decision is really dependent on how people are going to use it, right? And what I want to do is just thank you guys so much. Thank you for the panel. And I'd like to let everybody know that technology by Lytics and Surfsight powered by Lytics is enhancing safety outcomes every day for our customers and for you and me and our loved ones. So stay safe. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Jody, back to you. I think we did this in under 1 hour.
1:59 on the East Coast. Well done to everyone. Huge thank you to our partner Surfsight and to VTTI. You all did a fantastic job. I have a ton of notes, but one thing that really stuck out to me, and it's probably because I recently embarked on coaching club level volleyball, And I had never really thought about my athletic career and the use of video, because obviously a lot of us athletes or coaches out there are familiar with using video as a training tool, right, for our athletes. And I had never thought about it that way until this huddle, of this video technology really being a training tool for drivers, much like it would be for an athlete on the field. And you really don't see the things that you're doing until you can kind of look at yourself from the outside in. And so I just thought that was a really powerful way of looking at this, and for kind of reinforcing how this technology can really benefit people, right? The people who are at the heart of it, the drivers, and of course, the fleet management who's responsible for the whole show. So that was just I mean, I have a lot of notes. I'm not going to go through all of it, but I really did want to highlight that. And the second piece that I wanted to highlight was just that experience matters. I think that came through here very strongly today. So make sure that you keep that in mind as you start to embark on these technology implementations. This is the group that you want to work with. These are the people who have been there and have seen it. And as you might imagine, this kind of data does need to be interpreted correctly. And I think the accuracy component that Dell really pointed out and harped on was very, very important here. Like, it needs to be used correctly. So fantastic job, panel. Thank you again to Surfsight, BTTI, Matt. Thank you so much for being part of this. Ken, fabulous job as a moderator today. I was chomping at the bit behind the scenes, but you covered everything. And so great job. If you would like to contact us, you can always visit barcoding at barcoding.com. We're obviously on all the social channels as well. We'd love to hear from you. If you have additional questions, I dropped my email in the chat, but feel free to contact us and we'd love to work with you. Thank you all, and we'll see you next month for our next huddle. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Hi, did you enjoy the huddle? I sure hope so. We were really excited to have you as part of our conversation and would love to continue it. If you have a question or a challenge that you're facing and barcoding can help you out, please reach out. You can contact us on barcoding.com anytime or any of our social media channels. Again, we are here to help and would love to chat with you. Final ideas. Did you like the huddle so much you wanted to join? Do you want to come on air with me? Do you know someone who would be a great fit or a topic that you'd like to see covered? If so, reach out to me via email or LinkedIn, and I am happy to check in with you and talk through what we might be able to accomplish together. I would love to hear your ideas. We're always looking for new topics. So if you have an idea for Huddle or you'd like to be on a Huddle, contact me and we will make it happen. Thanks again for joining us. We'll see you next time. Bye.